Back to our text in Genesis 1:28. We move forward from when God created man and woman. It says, God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the sky and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And then God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the surface of the earth, of all the earth, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed, and it shall be good for you. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the sky, and to everything that moves on the earth which has life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. So, let's look at what we just learned. It says God blesses mankind, and then he lists four things. First, we mentioned this already, he said multiply. Similarly, what he said to the land animals, he says to man and woman. To put it simply, he's asking us to procreate, but of course that means after our own kind. Two human beings do not come together in marriage and procreate and create some totally different animal. Now some of your kids might act like they are some wild beast, but that doesn't mean they are. So multiply, that is a blessing. Here again, it implies the need to replace people who will be dying, even before death is a part of creation. Then he adds, we are to fill the earth. Now, this is interesting because he's asking us to achieve a large population. Humanists will tell you that it is a problem for the earth to have too many people. The Bible says God has already accounted for what needs to be on earth for the sake of a large population. We do not need to manage the population in that sense, and not particularly in abhorrent ways like abortion or in forced sterilizations, things that you see totalitarian governments increasingly relying on because of some misplaced notion that says we have to manage population. God is more than capable of managing the population of the earth to his needs, and he has told us, go out and fill the earth. Third, we were blessed with the authority to subdue, or you could say take control of, everything else God created. And you can see that self-evidently. Here again, those who would maintain that there's really no fundamental difference between an animal and a human being, and they try to put us all on a level playing field as if we're all just the same. That's an evolutionist perspective. They overlook the fact that there is no other animal on the earth subduing the rest of the planet other than man. Clearly, God has set us apart from the rest in that way. And as a result then, we rule that creation. Rule is different than subdue. Rule implies oversight, management, concern, stewardship, care. So on the flip side here for a moment, while we certainly recognize that God has given the world into our hands, we are special and distinct from the rest of creation, and we are to fill it. Nonetheless, he also said rule it, which implies careful thought and a protection against abuse. So this is not license for us to destroy the planet because we control the planet as God has assigned it. We're still responsible for taking care of it to the degree we can. So there's a balance there, even in the text. Now to something a little more interesting. In verse 29, what did he say our food source was to be on this planet? Well, it was fruits, vegetables, seeds, which are nuts and the like. So as you look at day 6, the original plan of God for creation was that mankind would eat only vegetables. Or another way to say it is we would all be vegetarians by design. And again, coming from Texas, this is a particularly disturbing notion for most of us. All right, where's our barbecue? What about meat? Are we not allowed to eat meat at this point? Well, why could we not eat meat? Why has God not put it on the table? What do you have to do to an animal before you eat it? Well, you have to kill it. I mean, yes, and then prepare it, draining the blood and the like. But remember, I read that verse earlier from Genesis, but it was Genesis 9. In Genesis 9, God made meat available. But prior to Genesis 9, that is right after the flood, no one could eat any animals. And the reason was because there was no death. I mean, try eating an animal without killing it. It won't be a very pleasant experience for either of you. And the point in no death is that God did not institute death as a part of creation. The simple way to put it is death was not something God wanted. And what by wanted, I mean it was not something God preferred. It was not something good. I think one of the reasons why we mourn so heavily in the death of someone, even a death of an animal we love, is that you're reacting to the fact that this is not natural. This is not who we were made to be. This is not how God wanted creation to go. Death feels like an interruption in what should be, and certainly it is. So in the outset of creation, everything was a vegetable eater, and not just humanity, of course, because if there's no death on the world, and that means there's no predators and prey relationship between animals either. So even the animals have to eat the vegetables. And yet you didn't pay extra for the graphics. It's just a bonus. You may remember or you may have heard in the Old Testament prophets, particularly Isaiah, when he speaks of the coming kingdom, the 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth, which we will participate in a day to come. In that day, God begins to remove the curse that brought death and predator-prey relationships, such that lions are said to go back to eating straw, and the lion, the lamb, and the wolf lay down, or the lamb and the wolf lay down together. These are indications that the normal process of animals being able to cohabitate without any issues, without any predator-prey relationships, that returns to the kingdom. But of course, it's not the way we see things now because of sin. And I'm going to introduce another thought at this point, not because it's in the text, but because it gets brought up by others at this point. And that is this. We have seen land animals made. We have human beings walking around on the earth. What about the dinosaurs? And I'm going to stop here just for a quick little thought, just a little conversation about this. What is a dinosaur? The term means terrible lizard, I'm told. But really, what is a dinosaur? It's an animal, and typically the way we conceive of it is the way Steven Spielberg and others have taught us to conceive of it. A giant, otherworldly, scary animal. Such that the word dinosaur really doesn't have a technical meaning anymore. It almost has a sensationalistic meaning. It means animals that we could never imagine living around. Animals that we could never imagine having on the earth with humans at the same time. The reality, though, is technically or scientifically, the word simply describes an extinct animal. But what makes it a special word is in the evolutionist's mind, it's an extinct animal that lived a long time ago. You may have noticed every time we talk about evolution, there's always one component to the conversation: time. Time. Evolution is hinged on long periods of time, such that that's the only way they can get you to buy any of the nonsense, because if you tell them that everything's only 6,000 years old, their theory completely falls apart. Dinosaurs are, to put it simply, animals that have gone extinct, some of which are quite large, but the average size of a dinosaur, the average dinosaur from history, from what paleontologists tell us, the average size was somewhere around the size of a chicken. There are only about a dozen, maybe a little more, dinosaurs that are of any significant size. But those are the ones that get all the attention in the movies because those are the ones that are most interesting. So there are many extinct animals found in the fossil record, which scientists call dinosaurs because they tell you they died millions of years ago. Not because there's anything special about their construction. They're just extinct animals, like the dodo bird or the carrier pigeon. We don't call those dinosaurs because they died during the history of mankind. We can say when they died, so we don't think of them as dinosaurs. They're just regular extinct animals. But in reality, there's no difference. So did large, strange-looking animals exist in the time of Adam and woman? Yes, absolutely. But do large, strange-looking animals still exist today, like giraffes? Do you realize a giraffe was larger than almost every dinosaur save one? That there are animals still today. The blue whale is larger than any animal that's ever lived of any kind. There are still very large animals today, just as there were then. Some look really odd. You're just used to them. You see them in the zoo, you don't think anything of it. But these same animals, the ones that we call dinosaurs, are no different. Now you might think, well, how did we live with them? They're so ferocious. Well, they were eating straw. By the time God opened up the door to eating meat, that's post-flood. And when did all of these dinosaurs get deposited into the rock layers of the earth? Well, they were deposited there after a great deluge covered the earth in water. So the ones that did not make it through the flood, that is to say, some of the ones that we now think of as old dinosaurs, were ones God said, you're not going to fit into a world where we're going to have meat eating going on and where human beings might be vulnerable to animals attacking them. God has pushed them out of the way and made room for just the ones he wanted to see continue on. Now you might say, well, I thought we had two of every kind on the ark. Two of every kind. Not two of every animal, two of every kind. So that we can have an animal on the ark that can diversify into more of its within its kind, but that doesn't mean that I have to have every diversified version of it on the ark. I just have to have one of the kinds on the ark, making more room for that matter. So there's a lot of this detail that's lost when we don't think about it very carefully, and I just wanted to cover the fact that when you think of dinosaurs, they're no impediment to the story of creation. They fit very well. They're just another land animal, one that died in the flood, one that's been sensationalized, and one that you've been told is millions of years old. But remember, the world was created with the appearance of age. I can't date it by itself. All right, so they died roughly 4,500 years ago in the flood. All right, back to Genesis 1:31 now. We've reached the point where at the end of the chapter, God has made everything and deposited man and woman into the world that he made, and that's what leads him to say that he saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. First time we've seen that phrase, very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. That change from good to very good is intended to draw our attention to the fact that he has now made the very thing he intended to make from the beginning, that everything else has been leading up to. The world is for man. Some would say, well, what about foreign or outer space and other worlds and other solar systems? Is there other life out there? What would that say about the creation story? Well, first let me tell you, there are no other life forms. There is no other world that's being inhabited. We are the only one. And I can say that on the basis of Scripture because the clear indication from Scripture is the stars, which is a way of describing all that we can see in the sky, not just suns, but planets and whatever else might be out there. All of those things are almost an afterthought to the main purpose of creation. They're there simply to send us signs or to show the magnificence of God. The world is all that God made, for it is the focus of everything that he's doing. It's this planet that he sent his son to. There is no other. Furthermore, the point of all of that outer space is to draw our attention to God, not to draw our attention to something outside of God, and the enemy is good to use those things, or good or capable, I should say, or powerful enough to use those things to accomplish the opposite purpose. So when people hear stories of outer space and UFOs and the like, it's my conjecture that they're looking at demonic activity intended to create in the minds of people this idea that you don't need to worry about what's in that book. You need to look outside and see what else is going on. It's not about God, it's about nature and the Big Bang, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's confusion. It's noise. It's the enemy trying to distract us from the truth of the Word. All right, let's go back to our chart. We have now successfully gone through all 6 days as far as chapter 1 is concerned, and we now reach what is clearly the main point, mankind. As some look at this chart or at the 6 days of creation, you'll see some people come away from this saying, you know, I just have a hard time accepting that this is true. And one of the reasons they may say that is it just seems like it took too little time. God did it too fast. You know, I can't believe everything could be done in just 6 days. And when you hear that kind of a comment, you're hearing the wrong question. They're asking the question, how did God do it so quickly? And that's the wrong question to ask. The right question to ask is, why did he take so long? If God can do any of it at all, well then obviously he could do it like that. He doesn't need 6 days. He did so much in just one day. I mean, if you can make all the sun, moon, and stars in a day, then you could clearly do the rest of it in that same day. The point is, God took a long time to do it, not a short time. And that begs the question, why did he plan it out in such a patient way? Why 6 days? Why not 3? Why not half a second? What's the point in doing it slowly? And the answer, of course, is right there. That mankind is the point. And by slowly developing the world and doing it in such a methodical way, you're left with a clear understanding that this is all about us. God was creating something for us, putting us in it at the last minute, the hamster analogy again. And that is to demonstrate his loving concern for us and what he's trying to do. So this is a story of how God went slowly. Now at this point, before we go into chapter 2, I want to take a second look at just the first verse of chapter 2, because for some, it begins to suggest that chapter 2 opens up a second creation account. That is, chapter 1 was written by somebody, and chapter 2 is written by somebody else, and chapter 2 is a whole different story about the same event told from a different point of view. This is a more common, more current or recent view that's come into being. People interpret the Bible this way to suggest that you can't really trust what it says, as if two different cavemen came up with two different stories and we just put them both in the Bible. But take another look at chapter 2, verse 1, when it says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were completed, and all their hosts." Compare that to what we looked at the beginning of chapter 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. When you put those two together and take what's between them, it reads very naturally as a topic sentence a description, and then a concluding sentence at the end of that description. No attempt to start something new, just an attempt to wrap up what was given in chapter 1. Why is Moses wrapping up what was in chapter 1? Why? Because he's about to go into a detailed discussion in chapter 2 concerning one of those days. One of the days of chapter 1 becomes the focus in chapter 2. And he breaks the pattern here with verse 1.